You see this Bloomberg shit? You listen to this? You listen to this Bloomberg audio? Man.
95% of your murderers and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 21. That's true in New York, it's true in virtually every city. That's true. Why? Because we put all the cops in minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them against the wall and frisk them.
And then banging my head into this.
I think we disproportionately stop whites too much and minorities too little.
You know, I've talked about racial profiling before. I think this is as good a time as any to talk about this, because there are people on CNN right now who are defending Bloomberg after this audio came out. I don't have the segment in front of me. I don't have the segment. But on CNN, a bunch of talking heads listened to that audio, and then they started shit-talking the person who leaked it and complained that they have a bias, or that they're introducing a bias to the electoral process. If chat can find the segment, you know. Now, mind you, Bloomberg has done business with the corporation that owns CNN before, you know, a little bit of that, you know, that sneaky backdoor multi-billion-dollar exchange of wealth that takes place when you're one of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the history of the planet. You know, just classic. Here we are, folks. Nice, thank you, chat. I can always rely on you in a pinch. So here's the CNN clip.
So here's the thing. Important context here. We don't have the full tape. So
where's the context to this statement? CNN asked. You know, you all heard the full clip. Bloomberg saying, "Yeah, we need to profile black people. We put cops in these neighborhoods because they're all the murderers." But where's the context?
So this is obviously snippets that have been released. The podcaster and the writer that released this sound is clearly a Bernie supporter.
Oh, man! Oh, the level of manufactured consent, dude. The level of manufactured consent. Information could be released. You know, we could get HD fucking Epstein surveillance tapes of Bloomberg, hey, who was in Epstein's Black Book, mind you, fucking a child on the Lolita Express. And if that shit released, CNN would take a second, you know, contemplate their navel, and then ask, but did the person who released the tape say which presidential candidate they were in favor of? Because this really seems like a Bernie move. What absolute disgusting, despicable pieces of shit. God, dude, I love the fires. I love being a populist. Imagine having to defend this. Imagine being a corporate shill. Can you fucking imagine having to defend this?
If you look at his Twitter feed, he's very anti-Bloomberg. He is promoting a hashtag, Bloomberg is a racist. We don't know how he got the sound to begin with, so lots of questions are being asked, especially on the timing of this. As you noted in your introduction, a poll yesterday shows Bloomberg rising in the polls and particularly strong support in the African-American community. He polled at 22%.
Complete pivot. Now, again, I know a lot of people have forgotten this. I know a lot of people have this has slipped their mind. You know, I get it. I understand. The news is supposed to report on information, not play defense for the billionaire buddies of their corporate network. I don't know. I don't know. The meaning has kind of gotten lost somewhere along the line. That is what the news is supposed to do. So when a voice tape comes out like this, which is, mind you, devastating, or at least it should be, and the talking heads here are briefed. They're briefed on this. They don't just come to this conclusion individually to ignore this incredibly damning evidence and then immediately start rambling about Bernie Bros again. They don't do that of their own volition. They're briefed beforehand. It's their job, you know. when they get this and they're briefed, the reason why this happens is because there is an inextricable link between the powerful systems in our country and the wealthy people who preside over them, and that it is impossible for this system, as it exists, to treat fairly competitions in which some participants are members of the billionaire class and some members are not. It's as simple as day, folks. Billionaires shouldn't be able to run for president. Billionaires shouldn't exist because they're like black holes in the space-time fabric, you know? They distort everything around them. They're not little individual agents, just little ministers of free speech. They are tidal waves of wealth and influence who distort everything around them. And when an audio tape comes out like this, and you've got talking heads who are immediately like, well, a Bernie supporter leaked it. We don't know where this audio came from, even though it's been online for 5 years and only recently was rediscovered because Bloomberg is running for president. Then you know you're not dealing with news organizations here. I want to talk, by the way, really quickly about the actual racial profiling thing. Because I think it's important to actually discuss this, because a lot of people, and I know you're watching right now, you're watching, and you're thinking, well, hold on, what's wrong with what Bloomberg said? Black people do commit a wildly disproportionate amount of violent crime. That's true. And police are supposed to stop violent crime. I mean, the math checks out. A lot of people don't understand why there's an issue with this. And I'd like to lay bare an instance of this being a terrible system. And it can be found, in fact, in the audio Bloomberg provided us. Here, we can go back and check really quick, actually. Bloomberg kind of lets us know, right off the bat, what the issue is with this line of thinking. Check it out.
That's true in New York. It's true in virtually every city. That's true. Why? Because I know I sit and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 25. That's true in New York. It's true in virtually every city. That's true. Why? Because we put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Because that's where all the crime is.
The profile of a murderer is a person of color, male, 16 to 25. Why? Well, because we put the cops in their neighborhoods. Well, why do we do that? Because that's where the crime is. Do you see the problem with this logic here? There are always going to be more arrests in the areas where you put police. That's how it works. It's circular logic, folks. And you get a system that replicates itself. Watch, very easy system for you to imagine in your head, okay? We can do this, we can run this along together, okay? Let's say, for example, you have a poor inner city black community, okay? Not exactly uncommon here in this country. And you have, let's say, a middlingly high crime rate. Maybe a little higher than like the suburb areas, or a little bit higher than the sort of adjacent white suburbanite areas. But altogether, the crime differential isn't super substantial, But then the police chief, who is trying to combat as much crime as possible with the limited resource that he or she has, sends more police officers over to the black neighborhoods, knowing that they commit more crime, so maybe the police will be, needed more there. I mean, that's good logic. It makes sense. You have a finite number of resources. You send those resources where they're needed. Except what that invariably means, the next time the crime statistics come around and get recorded, the next census or the next, Justice Department study, you will find that that neighborhood now has an even higher crime rate, disproportional to its surrounding neighborhoods. And there are two reasons for that. For one, you send more cops there. They're going to notice more crime. There are more cops there, obviously. I mean, what else are they doing, of course? If you send no cops to a neighborhood, you will find out that neighborhood has basically no crime rate. I mean, funny how that works, right? Abolish all cops, maybe crime will go away forever. Not really, of course. We know how this works. If you send cops to an area, they'll find crime. But the second reason is even more pernicious. You see, the more cops there are in an area, the more crime you find. But the more crime you find, the more lives you tear apart. Getting arrested's a pretty big deal, especially if you're poor, especially if you can't afford a lawyer to defend you, especially if you can't afford bail. Ruins people's jobs, can tear families apart, leads to the shutdown of businesses, leads to a fluctuating and unsustainable system of labor being transferred in and out of prisons. And now we have another issue. The crime rate isn't just rising because police are noticing more crimes because they're being sent there disproportionately. The crime rate is rising because criminality is rising. And criminality is rising because of the consequences of more people being arrested. So the police chief now has to send more cops to this fucking neighborhood because a disparity which once existed has now grown worse. And the only way, it seems, in his mind to fix this is to send more police officers. Mike Bloomberg is the king of stop and frisk. Mike Bloomberg is a little stop and frisk king. You see in this chart? Some people say Bloomberg inherited stop and frisk. Nope. He increased it by 6 to 7 times. And he only stopped after civil rights lawsuits started dragging at his coattails. You'll notice, by the way, that it didn't actually lead to an increase in stops that led to further action. This is collected by the New York Civil Liberties Union, pretty trustworthy outlet. Imagine increasing stop and frisk by this degree and not increasing the number of people who actually get caught on anything. No relationship between these data points. Yeah, he just used it to harass people. By the way, not white people. Bloomberg wasn't harassing white people. You heard it there in his goddamn interview.
Unfortunately, stop whites too much and minorities too little. Unfortunately, stop whites too much and minorities too little.
There you go. So we have a system that we know does not work. We know this is a non-functioning system. The stop and frisk thing, I mean, what are you going to do? You'll notice the little orange line down here is a percentage of the big yellow line. You'll notice that the percentage of stops that resulted in further action only increased when the total number of stops decreased, almost as though telling your police officers to indiscriminately target young black men for stop and frisk leads to a decrease in the viability of this method to actually detect criminality. Funny how that works. Something to be pointed out. Stop and frisk, Bloomberg's policies perpetuate a cycle of institutional racism and of income inequality. But that's grade level sociology. I mean, you could learn that in 8th grade. That's not the bada boom, The bada boom here, the big one, the big cheese, is that not only is behavior inexcusable, and by the way, very presidential. It's very presidential to be racist. Not only that, but the talking heads at CNN are willing to go up to bat for him. This is a guy who hasn't participated in any debates. Just bought his way, just bought a bunch of ads. Bloomberg could have spent this entire campaign so far eating potato chips on a couch. He just writes checks to his campaign manager. Now, he has walked around a little bit. He posed for that gay ice cream commercial. One time he grabbed the dog's face. He's obviously been doing stuff. Has he been doing enough stuff to warrant one of the largest news networks on the planet defending him baselessly and redirecting the conversation away from the inexcusable racism that he is enabling and enabled through his policies as mayor? I don't think so. I think that's pretty cringe, personally. Bloomberg is a shit candidate and a shit human being, and he is one of the most powerful people in the world.